right? So when we class time, we'll pour it out, we'll have the wine, we'll pass the bottle around. Just pour yourself like 2 fingers of it, right? We have leftover wine, we can always drink it. There's no problem with that, but when we're tasting, we gotta go slowly. Take, sniff. What do you smell? None of you guys are in bakery yet, so it's a new smell. But if you, Asia cooking? Anybody? Major Asian cooking? No? Maybe she knows. You smell? You know? Now taste it. It's salt on. Oh, I love this stuff. Hard to get in Korea. I had a friend bring it from America. Oh. What do you think? What does it taste like? Dateju? Interesting. What does it taste like?
Like a jujube paste. Jujube.
Jujube. You say it's dateju. That's a good taste. Do you like it? Who likes it? Raise hand. Who likes it? Who does not like it? You like it? You like it? Okay. It's licorice. Licorice.
감초.
Gamcho. What's gamcho used in?
Using 한약재?
It's used in medicine in Korea.
Yeah.
So usually when you guys taste it, you taste medicine. You taste hanyak. I taste it, I taste candy. So you can see when we talk about tasting wines where we have problem. Not problem, but taste differences. I like this stuff. I love it. I grew up eating it. It was a very popular candy. Not so much now, but it was. So let's say show hands. Anjuwaro. 1, 2, 3, 4. Come on. You like it back there? Yes. Juwayo, Anjuwaro. Anjuwaro. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12. Half the class, which usually it's more. He's had it before, so you might like it the second time, but usually the first time you guys don't like it at all. When you bring them up. You like it? No, usually not. And when you make cognac, it's a key point of cognac. So when you have that taste, I still have it. With you guys, a long time you drink cognac before you sit. So you sit, you drink that, that taste equals alcohol. And it's just, it's everybody. No.
40도짜리 처음 먹어보니까 몰라. 약간 좀 이상해.
Everybody got grapes? Who's missing grapes? Oh, down there, him, down at the end. Raise your hands. You got? Very good. Like I said, these are table grapes. They're much sweeter. But the principle still applies.
Now this one been smashed what, maybe what, an hour, all right? This has been sitting there together for an hour. Just not that long. And we get the California ones too. I'll get a white Zinfandel. Zinfandel is a type of grape, and it's a very dark red grape. But they make a pink or white Zinfandel out of it, and it's quite delicious. Right? You can see the color difference there. If I took the red grapes and you squeeze them directly, which I should do that. Nope, no more red grapes. The juice of the red grape is pretty much clear color. So what I want you to do is take a red grape, right, and peel it. Fuck you not. Right? But what we're going to do is eat it. Cheese up. Because you're going to get the tannin flavor. You're going to get that red wine flavor from that. Bitter. She doesn't, no, she doesn't.
Shower.
No. Dopta. Dopta, right? That side thing. And red wines are rich in tannins. Tannins is the name of it. But what I want you to see, what you see underneath there is clear fruit. So a lot of white wines are made with red grapes. Zinfandel is one of the most popular ones there. Can you name any varieties of grape wines? Cabernet Sauvignon, Arayo? Yes, yeah, I mean, you should probably have heard these. Merlot, Chardonnay, Zinfandel. Those are all varietals. Let's see, another V word, varietals, a type of grape. So again, these could be Thompsons. I'm not sure exactly what variety, but these are not made for making wine. You could ferment this. You could add some yeast. You're going to get Soul, but you're not going to really get wine, as we think as wine. A little sour. If there's eat the red grape. If there's a seed in there, crunch the red grape. And you get that dopta. That's a key component of red wine. Moving off to the green grapes. Green grapes are a little sour. They're a little sour. You're going to see the tannin is half. You don't get that dopta as you get with the red wine. But the grape is sour. Pretty sour grape, right? Sour or sweet? White grape. Sweet or sour?
Harp and harp.
I find it sour. Personally, I find it sour. Now we did have the licorice before that. Maybe that might have done. But the red grape didn't seem as sour as the green grape. The colors don't really come out too well on here, but young red wine, white wine are usually yellow, and they usually darken as they get older. As with red wines, they're a brighter red, and they more like this full body color. When they get down here, they change color to like it's other colors, brick. Brick Billy should bring in a brick. A reddish color. They lose their color to it. Just put this up. Once again, we'll talk more about this when we get into wines. So by definition, wine is an alcoholic beverage produced from fermentation of grapes and grape juice. Just Bexager. What's that? Bexager. Bexoju? It's like Sager, right? Pronunciation? Yeah, they sell it in the market. It's a Korean alcohol. Kind of yaki taste, has yak taste. Higher alcohol. 14 to 17%, somewhere around there. I don't know if it's a wine or it's, I don't know what it is. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Please. I haven't had it in many years. Now these two terms, wine and wine light, this has to do with the EU. And if you're going to sell wine in Europe, it has to be made from grapes, or grapes and grape juice. It must be made from that. Germany makes Sandalgi wine, really, really nice raspberry wine. But in EU, they can't sell it as a wine. And Germany's not too happy about it because the word wine-like is not a good term. It doesn't sound nice. Wine sounds good. Wine-like sounds like a copy, right? The mead, barley wine. We're talking about rice. What's the difference between Dongdongju and Makgeolli? What is the difference? Somebody told me rice floating inside Dongdongju.
Korea.
That's what they told me. I don't. To me, that's a lot. It got to be more of a difference than that. No. What's the difference? You guys should know that. I don't know. Okay. Anyway, moving on. Now, in China, they have a lot of alcohol, but you ever have Chinese soju? Yeah, oh, it is so, it's stronger than vodka. It's very strong. I spent, about 5 years ago in China for New Year's. And every table, and you had to drink it, you know. Very, very strong. But China itself has a long history of alcohol production and different types of wines, and they're becoming one of the biggest producers of wine today. But it's not, the quality is not yet for the market. It's still pretty rough. It takes a while to make good wines. Don't copy this down. You don't need to copy this down. This is by 2019. 2020, you don't have to write this down. It's really not important per se. But what is important is these are wine production. Who makes the most? France, obviously, we see like the big ones. Spain, Italy, United States. That makes sense. But it's interesting. Argentina is on this list. A couple of years ago, Argentina was down here. It slowly moved up. But Argentina wines in Korea, you don't see them. They're not here. And that has to do with trade. China's moved up into 6th position. A few years ago, they weren't even on here. 5 years ago, they weren't even on the chart. They moved up into there. Now, let's say this is production. It doesn't necessarily have to do with sales. Good wine, bad wine. It doesn't have anything to do with that. Just who makes the most. Australia, South Africa, Germany, Portugal. These are the big players. China's the new one. China and Argentina are the new producers in there. Are they good wines? I don't know. I haven't had an Argentina wine. Or I haven't had a Chinese wine like Cabernet Sauvignon or Merlot. I have not tried those, so I don't know. But there's no surprises there. On the next one is export. The largest export. No, who sells the most? Kind of interesting in Italy. Why do you think Italy is? They're not a big producer. It has to do with trade and tariffs. Italy does produce a lot of wine, but their wine is very cheap. So obviously they can sell more. France, why is France 1 and 2? They're always that, 1 and 2. Why? Why do you think that is? Are they the best wines in the world? Does France make the best wines? Not really. You'll see at the end of this class, after we taste a lot of wines, you'll have a different idea. And French wines are good, yes, but I don't know necessarily the best. The Argentina wine might be better. It's history. You think wines, you think France. You think cheese, you think France. You think Western cooking, you think France. So that's what a lot of it has to do with it. If you're going to give a bottle to a friend, you're going to give them a bottle of French wine. You're not going to give a bottle of Portugal wine or anything else like that. You're going to give them a French wine. Australia moved way up there in sales. And they make good wine for the Asian market. Their wines are much lighter, less tannins, a lot more white wines than red wines. Chile, which was our first tasting will be Chile. They're very much European style. They're economical. Economical doesn't mean cheap. It just means the price is less. And they have a very interesting history. American wines, once again, when you talk about American wines, basically you talk about California wines. But America being a big country produces a lot of wines. And I'm from New York myself. And New York produces a lot of German-style wines. Because the German immigrants and the terroir, the climate, very much German style. New York City does make some very nice wines, but there's other places, Oregon, Washington, the West Coast produces it. Obviously Germany is a good one. South Africa, good wines. There's nothing wrong with them. But South Africa is unusual. Who settled South Africa? It was a colony. Who colonized. First the Dutch, not wine producing people, beer people. Then England, beer people. But then in the 70s, when your parents were getting married, basically, probably around then, South Africa realized that their climate is almost perfect for growing grapes. And South African wines are new on the list, and they're moving up. They're moving up in quality. They're pretty good wines. Portugal, always a steady, good wine. Usually a little sweet. And when we talk about fortified wines, we're going to be drinking some Portuguese wines, because I kind of like that. Mordovia, no one on the list. Where's that? Eastern Europe, by Bulgaria, Romania, Moldova. They have one of the largest exports of wines. It's very, very interesting. Hungary in that area, Croatia, and Argentina coming up on the export. This is the sales. So if you look at this, these are probably the most popular wines worldwide. Now Asia is very much locked in, like I said, you go anywhere, you're going to see Chile, Australian, Chile and Australian is the major wines. And then if you go to supermarkets, you can get anything you want. But the American wines, who goes to Costco? Costco, I don't know. Go there and look at their wine selection. Almost half of it's American wines. And so when we're going to be tasting American wines, I'll go to Costco and get some American wines. They have some very good Chardonnays. The California Chardonnay, to me, beats the French one. And we might do a taste test. We'll see how this goes. Once again, we'll taste some Argentine, Chilean wines, and then from there we'll see how we'll go. I like to spend the money on French wines. You know, I have a budget. I can balance a budget. So the money I spend, I would rather spend it on with a good French wine and champagne. Only because I think that's a good education. French wines are a good standard. I'll say that for I shouldn't say they're not the best wines for this. They are the wine that everybody judges their wine. The people in Moldova, when they drink their wine, they go, "Oh, that's good. That's like French." You know, oh, good. Let's sell it. So that's a very important. France is very important. Italy has a problem with wines, even though they sell a lot. How can I say it? Each country has a group of people that kind of dojung their wine, they taste it, go, oh, that's good. In France it's AOC, in Italy it's DOC, and for a while, a long time in Italy, anybody produced wine, they put a stamp on it, quality wine. And they really weren't quality wines. They were just pushing it through the market. And so the quality started getting really less. Italy right now is not known for quality wines. That's why we're not even good at tasting Italian wines. The only thing that's good is the Chianti, and the Chianti is not that good. I'd rather stick with good, better wines at this point. Okay. Anything underlined? Let's get this. Let's think about mid-test. Usually these words, and they're all V's. It's funny that everything's a V. Vinus vinifera. Got rid of all our wine bottles. Still there's a lot of wine bottles. Empty ones. But before, I mentioned words before, like Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Chardonnay, Gewürztraminer. There's quite a few of them. There's really about 12 major varieties of grapes I use in winemaking. They are from the Vinus vinifera family. The grapes that we ate today are not Vinus vinifera. They're grapes, yes, but they're a different branch of the family. I was looking for a bottle too, because if you remember in the videos, which I hope you remember, wine labels, it'll say like Cabernet Sauvignon. It doesn't mean it's 100% Cabernet Sauvignon. Every country and but even in America, every state, and in France, every province has a law about what is what. 85% Cabernet Sauvignon, 15% Merlot, but they can put Cabernet Sauvignon on the label. So that's all that's different. But usually grapes are made from one or more varieties. They're usually a blend. And the big difference between old world wines and new world wines, we just have all these bottles and out here. And in the video I explain about it. Old world wines say Chateau de Lafite. That's it. New world wines will say, oh, Cabernet Sauvignon. They are varietal wines where French wines are still blended and you don't know what they're blended with. You take an American wine, for an example, which is a New World wine. It will say 75% Cabernet Sauvignon, 10% Merlot, 20%, 5% Pinot Noir. You know, they'll say French wines really won't say that. It's kind of like their recipe in that aspect of how they blend wines, and that's a very important. That's what the wine master's job is to blend them. That's why we start off with New World wines too, because they're easier to understand. If I give you a Merlot and you taste the Merlot and you taste the Cabernet Sauvignon, you're going to know the difference between it. But if I give you a Burgundy and a Bordeaux, excuse me, I couldn't really tell you what grapes are in there unless they write it on the bottle. This is a general overview. Once again, like I said, every state has its own thing. Well, we're going 75 to 85%. I made a mistake on the class plan. If a bottle says, that's what's interesting about that bottle of wine, because it says bottled in France, but it says European wine. That's the first time I've seen that, and I have to research that, because I've never seen that before. Because usually if it says, yeah, it's a product of France, it means it's 100% French grapes. Right? Bottled doesn't really mean that much, but usually, but in France it does, because usually bottle de chateau means grown, picked, crushed, and fermented at one place. And that's usually a quality wine. So that's an interesting wine. I have to really research that. California wine is supposed to be 100% California grapes. Texas, 85%. So in countries, South Africa too, it's like 65% of the grapes have to be South African, but they can import juice from other places and still call it South African wine. Once again, if you're going to become a sommelier, you need to know all this stuff. But in class, I don't think it's that important. What's a good thing is 75 to 85% constitutes a varietal. So you pick up a bottle of wine that says Chardonnay. There's a good chance 75 to 85% of those grapes must be Chardonnay. The other percentage, they usually add to balance it out, make it sweeter or drier. And Chenin Blanc is a very important grape that's used in that. Okay? Once again, the wine varieties and wine laws are so complex and changing, obviously changing because of that. I have to look that up. You know, don't copy this down either. Here's some species of, see ones that you would know. The ones that you're going to see. You'll see Cabernet Franc. You know Cabernet Sauvignon already. Cremera, this is up and coming. This is becoming a very popular wine right now. It's an up and coming one. Petit Syrah, Gamay Noir, these two. Or Gamay Noir is French for black. I mean, obviously these red grapes, but they're very dark grapes. All these varietals are used in winemaking in one way or another. Lambrusco itself, an Italian grape, used as itself, sold as itself. Merlot, we talked about Merlot. That's a very popular one. Pinot Noir, popular. Pinot Noir, usually used as that 15%, that 10%. It's usually a blended wine, but it's becoming now a predominant varietal wine. These are all Vitis vinifera. These are all grapes grown for wine making. More reds. But that's what I'm saying. Sangiovese. This actually is makes a very nice white wine, Italian white wine, Sangiovese. I like it a lot. Shiraz. Matter of fact, in school we've got a bunch of Spanish wines. Shiraz grape. It has two spellings, Shiraz and Shiraz. It's pronounced the same way, as far as I know. Zinfandel, I mentioned that several times. Obviously, it has a few names. Very, very dark grape. A very nice white wine. Very nice California white wine. The disease is the end. Get to the whites. As I say, to even think of this as being a sommelier class is crazy. You need to know these types of grapes, the acid content, the sweet content. It's really wild. It really is. There's a lot to it. Well, let's look at the big boys. Chardonnay, Chenin Blanc, Cabernet Sauvignon, Moscato, Muscatel. Go look at the soda machine here. If they have grape juice, it's Muscat grapes. These are one of the sweeter ones. They're one of the sweet ones. And Muscatel itself is a very, very sweet wine. Not very popular anymore. I kind of like it. Palmera, this is what you make port wines from. Pedro port wine. Pinot Grigio, or Pinot Gris. This is an Italian wine. And it's very, very nice with seafood and fish and things like that. And available, it's about the only Italian wine I would definitely recommend for a Korean taste, because it's much lighter. And it's good with seafood. So Riesling, which goes by, same variety, goes by different names. German wine, used a lot. Sauvignon Blanc. Blanc means white. Vert means green in French. Semillon. Sultana. These are what mostly Gumporo is made out of. You get like a box of Gumporo, you look at it, if it has a name on it. Sultanas are usually the grapes used for that. This has changed the name. Let's see what else. That's all of the big places. But if you notice, I picked out, and once again, we'll talk more about it, the things called anchor grapes. That you're going to see like 12 varieties of the same grapes all the time. Different blends, different mixes, but basically the same type of grapes. But these are all used in wine making. They won't say the percentages on it, especially European, won't say how much they use of certain ones, which make old world wines very difficult. Vinification. Viniculture, the art of growing grapes for wine production. Vinification is the making of wines. It's the underlying word. Name a sparkling wine. Champagne, Assis Spumante, Cold Duck. There's quite a few sparkling wines out there. Champagne can only come from one place, Champagne, France. So if we taste a California sparkling wine, it can be made like, there's two ways of making champagne. There's two ways of making champagne. One method is the traditional method, which is a very long process. And when we get to champagne, we'll talk about the long process. And then there's a short process, I call the Coca-Cola process. You take a still wine, a regular wine, like Coca-Cola. And that's what a lot of champagne sold in Korea is. But sparkling wines, in America, we still sell sparkling wines as champagne. We still use the term champagne. But sparkling wines are any wine that has bubbles to it, not necessarily champagne only. And there's two types of champagne. Second one is still wines. That's 90% of the wine. Still means no bubbles. Number three, fortified wines. We talked a little about fortified wines. I like fortified wines. They are very, very nice. This one gets a little confusing. Rosés and blushes. The term rosé and blush today, the terms almost interchangeable. They almost use the same term, but they're different making methods. A rosé is a pink wine, basically made with red and white grapes for a short time. A blush wine is usually a white wine with red wine added, plus sugar. That was the traditional, rosé was the traditional way. This is a new way of making a rosé. Now some people say they're interchangeable, but not really. Traditionally this was a pink wine made with red grapes, and this is more of a blended wine. And there's a term called chapelization. We'll talk about that later. But that's when they add sugar to the wine, which not done. Europe doesn't put sugar in wines, but in the West and New World wines, it's very common, especially Australian wines. The color of the juice doesn't have to do with the color of the grape. And Zinfandel makes a wonderful white wine, it really does. Very dark grape, a lot of tannins in it, but it comes out to be a very, very nice, light, fruity taste. It's a very, very nice one. You like that? There you are. Great flavor. Once again, if you're new to my class, a lot of you guys have already been in my class. If something's underlined, it's important. If there's numbers next to it, it's important. Okay? Just as a hint. So it's an important thing. For the purpose of this class, we these are two classifications. Online, you look at some books and reputable, good books and things like that are online. A lot of times these are put together as the same classification. For the purpose of this class, I separate them because they are made separately. There's two different ways of making these wines. So to me, they're different ways. You know this word? F-O-R-T. Song in Korea, fortress, like Hwaesong or Suwon Song. Castle strong. Fortified wines, fortified means strong. And what they generally do with this is they add brandy or alcohol to it. That's why we talk about distillation. And in class, we'll taste some fortified wines. And port wine, it's strong alcohol. It's about 17 to 24% alcohol. It's sweet, naturally sweet, not sugar added sweet. And there's a lot of flavor to it. I think in Korea, you guys would like fortified wines. All you guys, your hotel, right? Hotel back there? Girls? Cooking majors. All cooking majors. If you were serving dessert, say a cake, just any cake, how do you make a cake? What do you need to make a cake? You need a mixer, you need an oven, you need flour, sugar, eggs, butter. What else you need? You need a pastry chef, you need a dishwasher. What else you need? Well, that's about all you need. That's a lot. A fortified wine is, another name for it is dessert wines. So if you could just open up a bottle, pour it, and put it down, and charge the same price as a cake, there's some money to be made there. So to me, fortified wines are one of the best dessert wines in the world. They're sweet. You serve it with some walnuts, maybe some cheese on the side. Much cheaper than a cake. That's for sure. Much easier to serve, you to clean up. And you'll see, when we get to it, you'll like it, I know you will. Now, once again, not a sommelier class. This is a very short way of how wines are made. But they're basically made the same way, red and white wines. The same way. You pick them, you crush them. How long they sit together in the juice determines the color. So, once again, this is a brief recipes, basically. Definition of vinification. Vinification is the art of making wine. Conversion means to change. I find them sour. Oh, very sour. The big player is the skins and the stems. What does this taste like? Tastes like grapes. Never tried that before. A lot of tannins in it. Interesting. Seeds are important too. How much is pressed? If they crack the seed, it releases more tannins. Pretty much the same. I thought this would be darker, sitting longer. Pretty much the same. It is the same. So the key component of red wines is the skins, the stems, and the seeds. I should put the seeds on there. Because you guys, you've been into a grape seed before, right? That has a lot of tannins in it. There's a lot of, the little bite, there's a lot of flavor in it. And tannins are very important in red wines. We'll talk more about tannins later. So what's this called? The must. This is the must. White wines are generally squeezed and strained. Red wines usually squeezed and sat. And when they ferment it, they ferment everything together. Where white wines are generally filtered. They're filtered even after it's fermented. They filter it to keep that clarity. Where a red wine should be dark and not really clear, unless it's a rosé or a blush wine. Fructose and glucose. Those are natural sugars in fruit. Fructose is easy, that's easy to remember because it comes from fruit. Fructose comes from fruit. Glucose is pure sugar. White sugar is glucose, pure sugar. Rice, maltose. Milk, lactose. So toast means sugars, but in wine making, fructose and glucose are the two major players. They don't add flavor. Everybody adds the sweetness, of course, but they don't add the flavor that we talk about when we talk about wines. It's for the fermentation enzymes. And if you're in the bakery making bread, you're going to smell alcohol before you put the bread into the oven. It's going to have a very alcohol smell to it. Any baristas here? Barista? No? Coffee room. Maybe you've seen this term, ethyl alcohol. Maybe you've seen this term. Look at the hand sanitizer. They'll probably say ethanol or ethyl alcohol. It's what they use for the hand sanitizers is ethanol. Kind of interesting. What we drink, but it's, once again, ethyl alcohol in pure form kills everything. Done? Yeah. Don't worry, we're coming to an end. We're picking and crushing, so we're moving on. I know it's a lot in the beginning. The season's called crush season. And if you're in Europe or when I was in California, I lived in San Francisco, you could smell the grapes when they're crushing it. There's so much of it. A lot of Americans go to France during crush season, part-time job, auto bike, because it has to be done very fast, very quickly. Once the grapes are ripened, especially red grapes when they're fully ripe, that is the highest sugar content. That's when they're not sweet. I gotta say, you taste these grapes, they don't really taste sweet. They're not a sweet taste to them, but they're fully ripe, they're ready to go. And if they're not picked and crushed quickly, they'll start fermenting ahead of time. And obviously that's not what they want. They want to control the fermentation. So the speed is vital. The stuff is when the grower says it's time to go, like armies of ants. The guys are just, everybody, one day, clean the whole bot out. Is there fermentation valley? Now, I'll have some pictures for you. We'll see later on, like I said, but this is once again just a very overview on how wine is made. No chemistry, there's so much chemistry in there. This is where I talk about tannic all the time. Tannins, tannicness. Very, very important in red wine making and white wine. And tannins are in white wine too. Not as strong. Astringent. Someone pre-order for that. Astringent.
수렴성.
알아요? What's astringent? In cream cooking, what's astringent? It's not like lemon. It's not that kind of flavor. Hoodoo, walnut inside the paper, not the comb, not the nut, but inside the paper part of walnut, hoodoo. You have the gogi, the brain-looking thing, but you have the paper thing. That's astringent. Gum. Persimmon can be astringent. The taste in gum can be astringent. The gupchi can be astringent. In cream cooking, I don't know. It's not sour. Dry taste. Not necessarily. Doesn't sound good, right? It's not really a yummy taste. But when it comes to winemaking, it's very important in red wines because that is the body of the wine. Without tannins, you would have no wine. It's in the skin, so how long it sits together is how much tannins are in it. So when we're tasting wines, you'll see, we're going to talk more about it, but I'll use terms like astringent, tannic acid. Those are terms that are going to be used to taste wines and say, oh, that's very little tannins, well, it's very astringent. That's why white wines have very little tannins, but does contain some tannins, very little tannins, as opposed to red wines, because red wines sit together in the juice. So the skins and the juice together, while fermenting, makes tannins, acids. Tannin is, like I said, it's a key component of red wines. In this case, harsh or tart doesn't sound good. But once again, it's all about balance. It's like when you guys are cooking. It has to do with salt and levels of everything to make that balance to give that wine the character and body that you like. There's a very interesting, right now there's this thing called young wine movement. That the wines that we drink 5, 6, 7, because general rule, once again, most of this class is all about general rules. 2 years old, white wine. 5 years old, red wine. General rule in age. But there's a movement now saying that the only reason why we drink 5-year-old red wine is because 200 years ago, it took forever for wine to travel. So that was the flavor that it was. But wine, like Greece and Rome, were young wines. They made the wine, they fermented the wine, they drank the wine. 2 weeks old, 3 weeks old. That was it. But then today we drink wines that are over years old, and 5 years is a pretty long time. You think about it, today's it's 2021, so the wine this year, the red wine being being right now in France, being growing into the sun, won't be drunk until almost 2030. So you think about that, so there's wines out there. What year were you born? Year.
Me?
Yeah. What year? 1998. Yeah, so when we get to talk about port wines, there's plenty of 1998 port wines out there. There's plenty of 1977 port wines out there, 1957 port wines out there. So a lot of these things have some tremendous age to it. Some wines have a very old age, but the general rule, 2 years for white wine, 5 years for red wine, that's pretty safe. It's a good rule. Almost done, guys. I know this is one reason why I think online for the lectures is better. Because you can stop it, pause it, go back. I can't explain things to you, but once again, cellaring is the aging process. That's what you call it when the wine is sitting in the bottles and or fermenting, but cellaring is what ages wine. I didn't look at this closely enough. Because it says in French, it says, it was bottled for Barton and Gazeur, these people. It was bottled for them. And the only thing that says France in there is their address. So this actually probably wasn't even bottled in France. It's just a European wine with a French label. I wonder where this came from. I've never seen this before. Clever. It just says European wine. Wine of European Union. We gotta find out. Ooh. There's some open down there. Usually it's wines too. Once you open it, white wines, 3 days, 4 days, red wines, maybe a week, 7 days, but you have to drink them quick. They don't sit long at all. This is an important part about white wines that are not done with red wines. The filtering. And that's what makes them very, very clear. That's why, another reason why you don't really get bad wines today. It's hard to get a bad wine. Once again, with this class, like 1 or 2 years the best for white wines, mostly. The biggest problem you're gonna have with wine is that you meet these people and say, oh, I only drink French wines, or I only drink German wines. These are the best, and there is no best. If he likes the German wine and he doesn't, he's not right, he's not wrong, it's just what you like. And when we're in class too, I want you to taste everything. You don't have to like it, but still you should taste it. Try to understand it, try to see what's in it, that type of thing. But there's no right or wrong answers when it comes to wine. That's why, like I say, when we're talking about wines in this class, very broad, open, general feelings about wines. Mostly, some people say, oh no, I only drink 3-year-old white wines. Okay, that's good for you. Not for me. I think this is, and you need to start at some point, but wine should be aged at least a year, that's for sure. White wine can be made from either white grapes or red grapes. Juice is not fermented in the skins. This is going longer than I thought, guys. I'm sorry about that. We need to get the basics down before we start anything else. Got no water here. Is there a water problem in this building? Nobody knows? Yeah, the sanitizer here, ethanol, written in English on the bottom. Alcohol, the miracle drug. Use for everything. Amazing. Grapes pressed. Seeds remain unbroken, stalks, skins, everything's removed. It's just the juice. This has gotten muddy color now. This has changed color. I left the white grapes in there longer, and you see they turned to a green liquid. The first pressing, when you squeeze it really light, it's pretty much clear. The red is turning red, that's for sure. It got a little darker. It's still not very red color. I was expecting a little more. But like I said, these are not really long grapes. So. rosé and blushes. Once again, like I said before, there's confusions on different ideas on what it is. A blush wine is a new world, rosé is an old world wine. Well, blush wines are good for the Korean market because they are a little sweeter and lighter. Red wines, cut, squeezed, crushed, set together for up to a week. White wine, squeeze lightly, take the juice out. Rosé wines, a little of both. Sit for maybe less than a day, hours, maybe longer, maybe short. Portugal makes a good rosé wine. And their rosé wine is much stronger than, say, like a California rosé wine. Which would be considered a blush wine because it's chapternized. And when we get into that, when we get to California, we'll taste a blush wine. We'll taste a white Zinfandel or a blush wine so you get an idea. A lot of this stuff right now doesn't make any sense. And I'm sorry that it doesn't. But there's no way we can move forward unless you get these basics on how these are made. Because if we don't, then it's just drinking. We're at the end of it. You guys don't eat the grapes. You don't like the grapes? White wines are processed the same way, the wines are processed the same way as white wines, meaning that they're chilled and filtered. Where once again, red wines, the filtering system of red wines is a little different. It's called racking, which we're not going to get to today. We are running out of time, that's for sure. You know it's hard. Let's see what we got left. Way too much footage there. Yeah, don't worry. We do need to cover that. We didn't get into the ankle lines. We didn't get into the ankle